Before light and shadow collided. Hearken, O hearts that still beat with wonder, to the voice that rises through the veil of time. Sit by the flickering fire, where ancient winds whisper through the trees like forgotten hymns of the gods. I sing to you not of conquest, nor of triumph gleaming in golden laurels, but of a soul lost to silence, whose name became a curse. This is the tale of Medusa, once a maiden of radiant beauty, so divine that even the waves bowed before her. She who sang prayers beneath Athena's marble gaze, whose hair once shimmered like the sun upon the sea. And yet she became the monster. Her gaze turned life to stone, her name a blade feared by all. But listen closely. This is no tale of evil, nor one of simple ruin. It is the echo of injustice, the sigh of fate twisted by the hands of jealous gods. Before judgment, hear the beginning. For even the darkest curse once had a spark of light, and even the monster was once a girl who dreamed.
The Saga of Medusa, a tale of divine obsession and mortal fate. Here now, a tale whispered through the ages, a legend of beauty, devotion, the terrible wrath of the gods. This is the Saga of Medusa, a story etched not just in stone, but in the very fabric of ancient Greece. Chapter 1. The Coral Cradle. In the time before heroes, when the world was a raw, untamed canvas, painted by the colossal titans and the capricious gods, the deep sea reigned supreme. It was a kingdom of crushing darkness and unimaginable pressure, where chasms yawned into the planet's fiery heart. Here, in this sunless abyss, dwelt Phorcys, the old man of the sea, his form as ancient as the tides themselves. His consort was Ceto, the mother of monsters, a creature of primordial terror, whose merest whisper could summon a maelstrom. Their palace, unlike any kingly hall, was a living fortress of coral, pulsing with an eerie, internal light that cast spectral shadows dancing like drowned spirits. Its windows were colossal, abyssal pearls, reflecting the silent, ghostly ballet of the deep, the colossal krakens, bioluminescent viperfish, and the solemn drift of ancient sea turtles. Into this world of monstrous grandeur, 3 daughters were born. The first 2, Steno and Euryale, were true inheritors of their parents' terrible might. Steno, the mighty possessed hands of bronze, capable of pulverizing granite, and her cry was the grinding of tectonic plates. Euryale, the Farspringer, soared through the water on wings of gold, her eyes burning with the cold, unblinking fire of a predator. They were immortal, powerful, and utterly devoid of mortal warmth. Their beauty was terrifying, a perfect fusion of divine power and monstrous design. Then came the third. Her name was Medusa. From the moment she drew her first watery breath, she was an anomaly, a breathtaking paradox cradled in the deep. Where her sisters were born of shadow, Medusa seemed spun from the last lingering rays of a dying sun. While their veins pulsed with immortal ichor, hers flowed with the vibrant, fragile blood of a mortal. Her skin was not the cold, scaly gray of the abyss, but smooth and pale as the inside of a conch shell. Her hair was not a mane of eels or seaweed, but a cascade of the purest gold, so lustrous it seemed to capture and amplify the faint light of the coral palace, casting a gentle, warm glow in the eternal gloom. Her eyes were not the predatory slits of her sisters, but vast and deep. The color of the twilight sea where it meets the sky, sparkling with a curiosity that the abyss could not contain. Her father Phorcys would gaze upon her for hours, his ancient face a mask of wonder and profound sorrow. He saw in her the fading beauty of a world he had long forgotten, the world of air and light. Ceto, her mother, regarded her with a complex, dangerous love, a fierce pride in her perfection, yet a gnawing fear for her fragility. Medusa was a flawless pearl born in a nest of sea serpents. Her sister's reactions were a tangled tapestry of emotions. Steno, in her blunt, brutal way, saw Medusa's mortality as a fatal weakness, a flaw in their divine lineage. "You are made of sea foam and moonlight, little sister," she would rumble, her voice a low growl. "The first storm will dissolve you." Yet, in her own strange way, she was fiercely protective. No creature of the deep dared harm the golden child while Athena was near. Euryale, however, harbored a sharp, cold envy. She would watch Medusa sing, her voice a melody that could soothe the mightiest kraken and charm the deadliest sirens. And a bitter resentment would coil in her heart. Why was this fragile creature granted a captivating beauty, while she, an immortal, was made only to terrify? "Your songs are pretty, little one," she would hiss, her words dripping with venom and a strange, reluctant admiration. "Sing them while you can. The silence of the deep is patient." Medusa grew in this strange garden of monstrous love. She learned the language of the whales, their songs of sorrow and migration echoing through the palace halls. She played among schools of silverfish and kelp forests clinging to undersea volcanoes. She listened to her father's tales of creation and her mother's chilling litanies of horrors sleeping in the darkest trenches, but her heart was never truly at peace. She would swim to the highest spires of the coral palace, where the immense pressure lessened and the darkness thinned to a deep indigo. From there, she could glimpse them, faint shimmering beams of silver and gold lancing down from the world above. The sun, the moon, they were concepts as alien and magical as the gods themselves. She would reach out a slender hand, her fingers trying to catch the ethereal motes of light, a profound and inexplicable yearning filling her soul. She dreamed of warmth, of a gentle breeze on her skin, of the scent of soil and flowers. Sensations her sisters could never understand, and her parents could only describe in mournful, half-forgotten whispers. The ocean, for all its majestic and terrifying beauty, felt like a cage, and the shimmering surface above was a promise of a life she was born to live, yet forbidden to touch. Chapter 2. Whispers of Olympus. The gods of Olympus in their eternal golden city were far from ignorant of the world below. Their gaze pierced clouds, mountains, and even the deepest waves of the sea. It was Athena, the bride goddess of wisdom, war, and craft, who first took a specific interest in the mortal child of Phorcys and Ceto. Athena was not a goddess given to idle curiosity. In all things, she sought pattern, purpose, and potential. In Medusa, she saw something extraordinary, a vessel of perfect, untainted purity, born and raised in the very heart of monstrous chaos. It was a paradox that captivated her strategic mind. Here was a soul untouched by the corruption of the mortal world, yet possessing a mortal's profound capacity for devotion. The whispers began subtly. It came not as a thunderous divine command, but as a gentle, persistent call woven into the very currents of the sea. As Medusa sat on her coral perch staring at the distant light, the sound of the water itself seemed to change. It carried new melodies, fragments of hymns she had never heard, tales of courage, wisdom, and honor. The whale song seemed to speak of a Parthenon of white marble, and the sighing of the currents whispered a name, Athena. Medusa became consumed by these whispers. She began to ask her parents questions they could not, or would not, answer. "What is wisdom?" she would ask Phorcys, who could only shrug, the movement causing vast eddies in the water. "Wisdom is knowing when the tide will turn." "What is honor?" she would ask Ceto, who would bare her fearsome teeth. "Honor is ensuring your enemies fear you more than you fear them." Their answers were of the deep, practical, and primal. They could not comprehend the abstract virtues that governed the world of light. Her sisters grew wary. "You are chasing ghosts, little sister," Steno grumbled, cracking open giant oysters with her bronze fists. "There is nothing for you up there but a light that will burn you to ash." One night a vision came to Medusa as she slept in her chamber of woven sea silk. It was not a dream of water, but of air, of gleaming marble. She stood in a vast hall, its ceiling so high it seemed to touch the very sky. Towering columns of pristine white marble surrounded her, carved with scenes of breathtaking artistry. A goddess, springing fully formed from the head of a bearded king. An olive tree miraculously sprouting from a barren rock, a magnificent city rising in splendor. An eternal flame burned in a grand brazier, its light warm and steady. And before the flame stood a woman of awe-inspiring presence. She was tall and stately, her eyes the color of a storm cloud, yet filled with an intelligence that seemed to hold all the knowledge of the world. She wore a gleaming helmet and carried a shield that shone like a miniature sun. She did not speak with her lips, but Medusa heard her voice not in her ears, but in the deepest chambers of her soul. Purity in the heart of chaos, a light in the deepest dark. Your devotion is a treasure wasted in the abyss. Ascend, child of the sea. Seek my sanctuary. Find your true purpose. Medusa awoke with a gasp, her heart pounding with a feeling she had never known. A divine calling. The vision was more real, more tangible than the coral walls around her. The warmth of the flame lingered on her skin, the ethereal scent of burning olive wood in her memory. The yearning that had been a dull ache was now a sharp, undeniable imperative. She knew with a certainty that defied all logic and loyalty to her kin that she had to leave. The whispers were no longer just whispers. They were an invitation from a goddess, a promise of a life that resonated with the very core of her being. The cage of the sea, once a cherished home, now felt like a tomb. Chapter 3. The ascent, the decision once forged, settled in her soul with the immutable weight of a mountain. To leave was to betray the very nature of her birth, to abandon the only family she had ever known. Yet the divine call resonated deeper than any earthly bond. She approached her father first. Phorcys was resting on his throne of black basalt, his ancient eyes closed. "Father," she said, her voice trembling, causing the tiny fish around her to scatter like startled pearls. "Medusa, your heart is a storm. I can feel its turmoil in the very water that surrounds you." "I must leave," she whispered, the words feeling like stones in her throat. "I must go to the world above. There is a goddess. She calls to me." Phorcys was silent for a long, agonizing time. The only sound was the distant, mournful song of a humpback whale, a lament for what was lost. "The Olympians," he finally rumbled, his voice filled with an ancient weariness. "Their world is not for you, my child. It is a world of fleeting passions, of jealousy and fire. Here you are safe. Here you are cherished." "Here I am suffocating," she replied, a newfound strength in her voice, a resolve that surprised even herself. "I am mortal, father. My life is a brief candle. I cannot spend it in the dark." Next, she faced Ceto. Her mother was tending to her garden of venomous sea anemones, their tentacles waving like deadly flowers. Ceto's reaction was not one of sorrow, but of blazing fury. "You would choose them over us?" she shrieked, her voice echoing through the palace like a dying bell. "The vain, fickle gods who sit on their mountain and play with the lives of mortals. You are a fool. Your beauty has made you vain. You think you belong in their world of light. That light will blind you, burn you, and cast you aside like refuse." "It is not vanity, mother. It is faith," Medusa said, standing her ground, her voice steady despite the tempest within. Her farewell to her sisters was the most painful. Euryale simply turned away, her golden wings drawn tight, refusing to speak a single word, her silence a sharp, cold wound. But Stheno, the mighty, the seemingly unfeeling, pulled Medusa into a clumsy, crushing embrace. Her bronze hands, which could shatter rock, were surprisingly gentle, almost tender. "The world of air is thin," Stheno grunted, her voice rough with an emotion she could not name, a tremor of an unfamiliar sorrow. "Do not let them break you, little sister, and if they do, remember the way home. The sea will always take you back." With that final gruff blessing, Medusa turned and swam away from the coral palace, not daring to look back. Her journey was a vertical pilgrimage, a climb from one reality to another. She swam upward, past the territories of slumbering leviathans and the hunting grounds of chimerical sea beasts. The crushing pressure of the abyss slowly lessened, the water growing warmer. The darkness thinning from impenetrable black to a deep, vibrant blue, then to an ethereal azure. For the first time, she saw the sun not as a distant, shimmering mote, but as a brilliant, all-encompassing presence. The light filtered down, creating shifting cathedrals of blue and gold, a vision of paradise. The water became clearer, teeming with life she had never imagined. Dolphins that danced in the waves, colorful reefs teeming with a million tiny, vibrant lives. As she neared the surface, The light became almost unbearable, a searing balm. She breached the water with a gasp, breaking the boundary between worlds, a birth into a new reality. The sensation was a shock that jolted every nerve in her body. Air, it filled her lungs, thin and strange and intoxicating. The sun. It was a ball of pure white-hot fire, and she had to shield her eyes, which had only ever known the dimmest of glows. She felt its warmth on her skin, a feeling so new and blissful, it was almost painful. The sky was a vast, endless dome of azure, dotted with clouds like puffs of sea foam. The world was a symphony of new sensations. The piercing cry of a gull, the invigorating scent of salt and pine from a distant shore, the gentle rocking of the waves, now a cradle instead of a cage. She wept tears of joy and terror mixing with the salt of the sea. She was adrift, alone, a newborn, in a world of blinding, beautiful light. Chapter 4. The Sanctuary of Wisdom. Guided by an instinct she knew was Athena's divine will, Medusa swam towards the distant outline of the land. Her mortal body, though accustomed to the immense pressures of the deep, tired quickly in the relentless chop of the surface waves. It was a struggle, a profound test of her resolve. But the vivid memory of the vision in the temple propelled her forward, an unbreakable beacon. She finally collapsed on a shore of white sand, her body trembling with exhaustion, the sun-warmed grains a miracle against her skin. After resting, she journeyed inland, a stranger in a strange land, every sight a revelation. The vibrant greens of the trees, the rich brown of the earth, the impossible hues of the wild flowers. It was all a visual feast that left her breathless. She followed a well-worn path, her bare feet learning the texture of soil and rough stone. Soon she saw it, rising on a high acropolis that majestically dominated the landscape, the gleaming temple of Athena. It was exactly as it had appeared in her vision, yet infinitely more magnificent. The Parian marble seemed to hold the very sunlight within it, glowing with a soft internal fire. The columns, fluted and majestic, rose towards the boundless sky, their capitals carved into elegant scrolls, perfect and serene. As she drew closer, she could discern the intricate friezes depicting the goddess's great victories and benevolent gifts to humankind. The sheer scale and perfection of the architecture was a testament to a mind that valued order, its beauty and logic above all else. A stark contrast to the chaotic, organic grandeur of her father's undersea palace. With a heart full of reverence and trepidation, she ascended the wide marble steps. Worshippers and priestesses moved with a quiet, purposeful grace, their devotion palpable. They turned to stare as she approached, their eyes widening at the sight of her. It was not just her unearthly beauty, but the aura she carried, the faint, lingering scent of the deep ocean, the shimmering gold of her hair that seemed to have a life of its own, and the profound, untainted innocence in her twilight eyes. She was met at the entrance by the high priestess, stern older woman named Athena, whose face was a roadmap of devout years and unwavering faith. Athena's eyes, sharp and intelligent, missed nothing. She saw the girl's strange foreign beauty, but she also perceived the unwavering faith that shone from within, a light as pure as the eternal flame. "I have come to serve the goddess Athena," Medusa said, her voice soft but clear, resonating with conviction. "She called to me in the heart of the sea, and I have answered." Athena studied her for a long, silent moment, her gaze penetrating. She had heard whispers on the wind, prophecies from the oracle of a special devotee to come, one born of contradiction. "The path of service is one of sacrifice," Athena said, her voice a low hum, steady and authoritative. "It requires a vow of purity, a life dedicated solely to wisdom and craft. You must forsake all worldly passions and devote your heart, mind, and body to the Guide One. Are you prepared for such a life?" "I am," Medusa answered, without hesitation, her conviction absolute. "It is the only life I have ever wanted." And so Medusa, the mortal daughter of ancient sea gods, became a priestess of Athena. She took the sacred vows of celibacy and service, trading her oceanic freedom for the structured sanctity of the temple. She learned the rituals, the hymns, the sacred crafts of weaving and olive pressing. She tended to the eternal flame in the great bronze brazier, ensuring it never faltered. its steady warmth a constant reminder of the goddess's ever-present grace. Her past life in the abyss began to feel like a distant, fading dream, and the temple became her entire world, a sanctuary of light and purpose that she had yearned for in the profound darkness. Chapter 5. The Golden Priestess. Time in the temple flowed not like the chaotic, unpredictable tides of the sea, but like a calm, steady river, serene and purposeful. Days were marked by the rising and setting of the sun. Duties were dictated by sacred tradition, and life was a quiet, rhythmic dance of prayer and devoted service. In this environment, Medusa flourished, a blossom unfurling in the sun. Her devotion was absolute, her spirit as pure and unwavering as the eternal flame she tended with such care. She became known throughout Attica and beyond as the Golden Priestess. Her beauty, which had been a strange anomaly in the deep, was now seen as a clear sign of divine favor, a blessing from Athena herself. When she led the hymns, her voice, trained by the sirens and the great whales of the deep, soared through the cavernous hall of the temple with a beauty so profound it could bring tears to the eyes of even the most hardened warriors. Worshippers claimed that to hear her sing was to hear the very voice of the goddess. Her hair was a marvel to behold. When she stood in the sunlit colonnades, it seemed to trap the golden light, creating a shimmering halo around her head. The other priestesses would watch, mesmerized, as she wove intricate tapestries, her slender fingers moving with a speed and grace that seemed supernatural, almost otherworldly. The tapestries she created were masterpieces, depicting not scenes of war or conquest, but of peace and prosperity. The olive groves flourishing, people of Athens learning the arts of civilization, the wise owl of Athena soaring over a tranquil city. She found a quiet, profound joy in her duties. She loved the clean scent of the burning olive oil, the cool smoothness of the marble floors beneath her bare feet, the intellectual challenge of the philosophical texts she studied diligently with Athena. She had found her purpose, her true calling. She was a vessel for Athena's wisdom and grace, a conduit of peace in a world too often torn by strife and conflict. People traveled for days from distant lands just to catch a glimpse of her, to receive a blessing, or simply to stand in her serene, luminous presence. They brought her offerings, not just for the goddess, but for her, a testament to her growing reverence. A humble farmer would leave a perfect, sun-ripened fig, still warm from the vine. A wealthy merchant would offer a bolt of the finest Tyrian purple silk, gleaming richly. A poet would compose an ode to her unparalleled beauty and piety. Medusa accepted these gifts with humble grace, always unfailingly. Redirecting the praise to the goddess, she served with such unwavering devotion. "It is not my beauty, you see," she would say, her voice gentle and melodic, "but the reflection of Athena's wisdom, which beautifies all it touches." But such radiant light could not exist without casting an ever-lengthening shadow. The more her fame grew, the more the whispers changed. Men who came to worship Athena found their thoughts straying, their prayers becoming tainted with worldly desire. They spoke of her not just as a holy woman, but as the most beautiful mortal in all of creation, lovelier even than the legendary Helen of Sparta. Athena, the high priestess, saw the creeping danger, the subtle shift in the air. She took Medusa aside one evening as they trimmed the wicks of the sanctuary lamps, the flickering light casting long dancing shadows. "Your devotion is true, child. I have never doubted it," Athena said, her face etched with profound concern, her voice low and grave. "But the hearts of men are easily swayed by beauty. It is a powerful, dangerous force. It inspires poetry, yes, but it also inspires jealousy and obsession. Be wary. Guard your heart, but also guard your presence. Do not let their admiration become a fire that consumes you in this holy place." Medusa listened, her heart growing cold with a faint, familiar dread, a premonition of darkness. She had not sought this admiration. She wanted only to serve, to devote herself wholly to Athena. Yet she could feel the subtle shift in the air. The way the men's gazes lingered too long, the possessive glint that flickered in their eyes. The purity of her sanctuary was being threatened not by a monster from the deep, but by the very mortals she had sworn to guide. The peace she had fought so hard to find was becoming fragile, as delicate as a spider's web in a gathering storm. Chapter 6. The Shadow of the Trident. The whispers of Medusa's unparalleled beauty did not stay confined to the mortal realm. They were carried on the sea breeze, across the waves, and down into the deepest, most secluded parts of the ocean, reaching the ears of the god who had once been her neighbor, and was now her bitter nemesis, Poseidon, the Earthshaker, Lord of the Sea. Poseidon's rivalry with Athena was as old as the very city of Athens itself. They had famously competed for the patronage of the city, his gift of a saltwater spring losing to her gift of the fertile olive tree, a wound that festered in his divine pride. Every triumph of Athena's was a sharp thorn in Poseidon's side, a fresh insult to his immense power. And now, to hear that the most beautiful creature in the world, a creature born of his own domain, no less, was serving as the chief priestess in his rival's most sacred temple was an unforgivable affront. An insult he would not abide. His interest was not merely one of divine politics or ancient grudges. It was one of overwhelming pride and consuming desire. He, who could have any Nereid or Oceanid for the asking, became obsessed with the one he could not have. Medusa, the chaste priestess, the mortal jewel of the sea, now consecrated to the virgin goddess, became the ultimate prize, a symbol of his eventual triumph. To possess her would be to humiliate Athena in the most personal and profound way imaginable. He began to test her, subtly at first, like a rising tide. As Medusa went to the shore to draw sacred water for the temple rites, the waves would behave strangely, parting for her or forming perfect, intricate patterns on the sand. A single, flawless pearl, gleaming with impossible luminescence, would be washed up at her feet. A conch shell, discarded on the beach, would whisper his name on the wind, a low, insistent murmur. Poseidon. The very water of the spring she drew from would suddenly taste of salt, undeniably of the deep sea. She recognized the signs, the intoxicating scent of the ocean, the primal power that echoed her father's ancient court. She ignored them, her resolve a marble wall against the encroaching tide, her faith a shield. He grew bolder, his patience wearing thin. One afternoon, as she prayed alone in the sanctuary, immersed in the quiet sanctity of the temple, a thick mist, heavy with the pervasive smell of the ocean, rolled in through the open doors, chilling the warm, still air. From the mist, a voice emerged, deep and resonant, as the ocean floor, a sound that vibrated through her very bones. "You do not belong here, child of Phorcys," the voice boomed, seeming to come from the very stones of the temple, from the air itself. "You are of the sea. Your golden hair is an echo of the sun on the waves, a tribute to my domain. Your eyes hold the very depth of my boundless kingdom. Why do you serve the cold, sterile goddess of the sky when your very blood sings the song of the tide? Return to me, turn to the sea, and I will make you its queen. You shall have dominion over its boundless treasures." Medusa's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. But she did not look up from her prayers, her gaze fixed on the eternal flame. "I serve wisdom," she answered, her voice shaking but firm, unwavering. "And I have made a sacred vow. This is my home. You are not welcome here, Lord of the Sea. This is the sacred ground of Athena." A low, rumbling laughter echoed through the hall, sound that vibrated with immense, barely controlled power, threatening to crack the very marble. "A vow?" The voice mocked, dripping with scorn and arrogance. "A vow to a goddess who sees you as a mere tool, a decorative servant? I see you as a treasure beyond compare. Your beauty should be celebrated, worshipped, not hidden away in this cold stone box. I will have you, Medusa. A queen should not be a servant, confined to a temple's walls." The mist receded as quickly as it had come, leaving Medusa trembling. The air thick with the lingering, oppressive scent of brine and ozone, a taste of the sea's vastness. The threat was no longer a whisper. It was a clear, undeniable declaration of war. She reported the incident to Athena, whose face grew pale with a chilling dread. "The gods are cruel in their passions, child," the high priestess said, her hand resting on a sacred text as if for strength, her voice barely a whisper. "Your faith is your only shield now. Let it be as strong as the aegis of our goddess. Pray, Medusa. Pray that Athena's wisdom proves stronger than Poseidon's relentless desire. From that day on, a palpable dread hung over the temple. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen, impending conflict. The eternal flame seemed to flicker erratically whenever a sea breeze, laden with the scent of salt water, blew through the colonnades, as if struggling against an invisible force. Medusa felt his eyes on her constantly, a possessive, predatory gaze that reached her even in the most sacred inner sanctums of the temple, a suffocating presence. She redoubled her prayers, her songs becoming desperate pleas for divine protection. Her devotion a desperate, fragile shield against the coming storm. She was a single, flickering candle of faith, standing against the full rising tide of a god's dark obsession. The shadow of the trident had fallen across her sanctuary. It's cold and ominous, and she knew, with the chilling certainty of her sea-born blood, that the waves were about to break, and her fate hung precariously in the balance. Volume 2, The Serpent's Curse and the Stone Garden. Chapter 7, The Desecration. The day of the Panathenaic festival dawned bright and clear, the sky a flawless dome of Athenian blue, seemingly blessed by the very gods. A vibrant current of joyous energy flowed through the city, a river of humanity streaming towards the sacred Acropolis, their hearts alight with devotion. Inside the temple, the air was thick with the intoxicating scent of incense, roasted barley, and the myriad flowers laid before the magnificent chryselephantine statue of Athena. Medusa, as the golden priestess, stood at the very heart of this devotion. Her voice leading the grand chorus, her grace a focal point of the city's unwavering piety. Yet, beneath the sacred rituals and joyous songs, a cold dread coiled in her stomach, a premonition of impending doom. The sea breeze felt different today, heavy, possessive, and charged with a power that had nothing to do with the serene goddess of wisdom. It was the scent of a storm that brewed not in the heavens but in the depths. As twilight fell, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and angry orange, and the last of the worshippers departed, leaving the priestesses to their final, solemn duties, the tempest broke. It came not from the sky, but from the churning, vengeful sea. The very ground began to tremble, a low, guttural growl that vibrated up through the ancient marble floor, shaking the foundations of the world. The eternal flame in the great brazier sputtered violently, casting wild, dancing shadows that writhed like tormented spirits. Then, with a sound like the world itself rending, the heavy bronze doors of the temple, which took 10 strong men to move, were blasted open by a concussive force. A wave of salt water, impossibly high, a liquid fist of fury, crashed into the sanctuary, extinguishing lesser lamps, dousing the sacred offerings, and leaving a trail of briny destruction. The other priestesses screamed, scattering like frightened doves before a predator, their faith shattering in the face of such raw, primal divinity. Only Medusa stood her ground. She stood before the colossal statue of her goddess, her slender form a defiant candle against a tidal wave of divine wrath. A figure materialized in the doorway, silhouetted against the tumultuous, unnaturally dark sky, was Poseidon. He was not in the guise of mist or a disembodied voice, but in his full, terrifying divine form. He was a colossus of muscle and brine, his skin the color of weathered bronze, his beard a wild tangle of black seaweed and captured foam. In his hand he held his trident, and it pulsed with a malevolent, deep blue light, the air around it crackling with ozone, tasting of lightning. His eyes were the heart of a hurricane, swirling with raw power and an ancient, implacable lust, fixed solely on her. Medusa, he boomed, and the name echoed like the crack of a glacier, shaking the very columns. Theno and the other priestesses, their courage utterly broken, fled through the rear corridors, their cries fading into the night. Only Medusa remained alone. "This is a sacred place," she cried, her voice a sliver of courage in the echoing, defiled hall. "You have no right. By the laws of Olympus, by the sanctity of this ground, I command you to leave." Poseidon threw back his head and laughed, a sound like the grinding of countenance, a roar of contempt. "Your goddess is not here, little priestess. Her laws are but whispers against the roar of the sea. I have offered you a crown, and you chose a cage. I have offered you worship, and you chose servitude. will not be denied. He strode forward, each titanic step shaking the temple to its foundations, the wet marble groaning beneath his weight. Medusa did not run. She pressed herself back against the cold, unyielding base of Athena's statue, as if trying to draw strength from the insensate ivory and gold, a final, desperate plea for protection. She raised her hands, not in attack, but in a gesture of supplication, of utter despair. Please, I am sworn to her. This is her home.
How?
Do not do this. His hand, large and rough as barnacled rock, closed around her arm with brutal strength. Her cry was cut short as he pulled her away from the statue, her feet skidding on the wet, defiled marble. The violation was swift, brutal, and absolute. On the cold floor of the sanctuary, beneath the impassive, golden eyes of the goddess she had given her life to, Medusa's sacred vow was broken. Her body was desecrated, and her faith was murdered. The roar of the sea god mingled with her broken sobs, a cacophony of triumph and despair that defiled the holiest place in all of Athens. Chapter 8. The Judgment of the Great Goddess. Silence. A silence more profound and terrible than any storm. Heavier than the deepest abyss. Poseidon was gone, vanished as quickly and violently as he had appeared, leaving behind only the lingering scent of the sea, the chill of the wet, violated floor, and a silence that screamed of desolation. Medusa lay crumpled on the marble, a broken doll of a girl, her once golden hair spread out in a pool of salt water and tears, reflecting the dim, angry twilight from the open doors. The sacred flame, the eternal symbol of Athena's presence, had been reduced to a few sputtering, dying embers. The temple, her sanctuary, her very world, felt like a tomb, cold and empty. Slowly, agonizingly, she pushed herself up. Every part of her body ached, a dull, throbbing pain, but the pain in her soul was a wound from which she knew, with chilling certainty, she would never recover. She looked up at the great statue of Athena, her vision blurred by tears in the lingering haze of trauma. "Mother Athena," she whispered, the words a raw, ragged prayer, a desperate plea for solace, for understanding. The air in the temple grew cold, a sharp, piercing chill that had nothing to do with the sea, but rather with the frigid wrath of a goddess. The remaining embers of the sacred flame were extinguished at once, plunging the vast hall into a deep, oppressive gloom, lit only by the faint, angry twilight from the open doors. A light began to gather before the statue, a light that was not warm or comforting, but sharp and silver, like the edge of a newly honed sword. It coalesced into a form, and Athena stood before her not as a vision, but as a terrifying living presence. The goddess was even more terrifying in her wrath than Poseidon had been in his lust. Her gray eyes were not stormy. They were frozen, chips of flint holding an eternity of cold, implacable fury. Her face, usually a mask of serene wisdom and noble purpose, was contorted into a snarl of utter disgust, a mask of pure loathing. She did not look at Medusa with pity or even with recognition, but, with a revulsion so profound it was a physical blow, a wave of condemnation. "You have defiled my house." Athena's voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence, each word a shard of ice, piercing Medusa's very soul. Medusa flinched, shaking her head in disbelief, a desperate denial. "No, it was him, Poseidon," he forced. "Silence." Athena snapped, and the word cracked like a whip, echoing through the empty hall. "You speak his name in my presence? You, who were sworn to me, who were the vessel of my purity. You allowed this filth to enter my sacred space. You allowed him to spill his oceanic brine upon my floors. You, with your celebrated beauty, your siren's voice, your mortal weakness, you drew him here. Your vanity was the bait, and my temple was the trap." Tears streamed down Medusa's face, hot and stinging. "No, I swear, I fought him. I prayed to you." "Where were you, mother? Where was your protection?" "Your prayers were the mewling of a kitten before a lion," Athena sneered, taking a step closer, her divine presence radiating an aura of such immense, unforgiving power that Medusa shrank back, cowering. "You think I am blind? I saw it all. I saw you, a child of the sea, returning to your true base nature. You brought the chaos of the ocean into my house of order. You have stained it. You have stained me by association with your impurity. The injustice of it was a searing fire in Medusa's throat, choking her, stealing her breath. The goddess she had worshipped, the mother figure she had abandoned her family for, was blaming her the victim. The logic was so twisted, so cruel, so utterly devoid of compassion, it was beyond comprehension. Athena's jealousy, her unyielding pride, her ancient rivalry with Poseidon had all converged into a singular, hateful point, and that point was Medusa, the broken priestess. "He is a god," Athena continued, her voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper, chilling Medusa to the bone. "He will answer for his part in this too, Zeus, in due time. But you are a mortal, a broken, sullied thing. You are a testament to my shame, a living stain upon my honor. And you will be made a testament to my power, a terrifying example. Men desired you for your beauty. I will make it so that no man can ever look upon you again and live. They praised your golden hair. I will make it a crown of horrors. You will be a lesson, priestess. A lesson that what Athena sanctifies, no one and nothing can be allowed to defile without paying the ultimate price." Medusa looked into the goddess's frozen, unforgiving eyes and saw no mercy, no shred of pity. She saw only the cold, calculating mind of a strategist turning a personal defeat into a terrifying display of absolute, unchallengeable power. She was no longer a devotee. She was an object, a weapon to be reforged, a symbol to be made. The last flicker of hope in her soul died, extinguished by divine cruelty, and she closed her eyes, waiting for the terrible sentence to fall. Chapter 9. The Metamorphosis. The curse began not with a thunderclap, nor a blinding flash, but with a cold, slithering sensation at the base of her skull, a creeping horror that stole her breath. Athena raised a hand, and from her fingertips flowed a stream of dark, crackling energy that enveloped Medusa's head like a shroud. It was a feeling of profound, invasive violation, 1,000 times worse than Poseidon's physical assault. This was an attack on her very essence, a defilement of her soul. The pain was incandescent, a searing agony that consumed her. Medusa screamed, a raw animal sound of pure, unadulterated torment. As the roots of her hair began to burn with a cold internal fire, she clawed at her scalp, her fingers touching not soft strands of hair, but something thick, scaly, and horrifyingly alive. She felt them twisting, writhing, thickening, each strand gaining a monstrous life of its own. The beautiful golden locks that had been her pride, the symbol of her light, were mutating before her very senses. Each strand became a serpent, its scales a slick, oily black, its eyes glowing with a malevolent green light, small, cruel jewels. They hissed, a symphony of venomous whispers that filled her ears, their forked tongues flicking out to taste the air, their bodies coiling and uncoiling in a hideous living crown that tightened around her skull. She fell to the floor, convulsing, writhing in unimaginable pain. The immense weight of the serpents a leaden agony on her head and neck, crushing her. But the curse was not finished. The coldness spread from her scalp downwards, a creeping plague upon her flesh. Her skin, once pale and smooth as the inside of a conch shell, took on a sickly, mottled green-gray hue, becoming tough and scaly, like that of a reptile, rough and unyielding. Her fingernails thickened and blackened, curving into sharp, cruel talons, like the claws of a predatory bird. The worst was what happened to her eyes. She felt an immense pressure building behind them, an immense, terrible power pouring into her gaze, twisting her very sight. The soft, twilight sea color of her irises burned away, replaced by a glowing, phosphorescent yellow. Like the predatory eyes of a nocturnal beast, devoid of warmth or humanity. They felt alien in her own head, no longer windows to her soul, but weapons pointed out at the world, ready to unleash their horror. She could feel her face contorting, her once celebrated features twisting from their exquisite beauty into a mask of pure terror, a grotesque caricature of a woman. Her mouth, once shaped for hymns and gentle words, was now a grim slash and a monstrous visage. Great, boar-like tusks, sharp and cruel, grew from her gums, forcing her lips apart in a permanent snarl. Her tongue felt thick and forked, alien in her mouth. The transformation was absolute, a meticulous and hateful unmaking. Every part of the maiden she had been was systematically, cruelly erased and replaced with a piece of a monster. It was the death of 1,000 tiny cuts, a complete annihilation of her former self. When it was over, she lay panting on the floor, no longer a woman, but a thing, a creature of nightmare. The being known as Medusa, the golden priestess, was dead. In her place lay a gorgon, a creature of nightmare, her every breath a hiss, her every glance a vessel of death. Chapter X. The Scream and the Banishment. The first to find her was Athena, the high priestess. Her courage slowly returning after the terrifying departure of Poseidon, crept back into the sanctuary. Holding a single trembling lamp, its feeble light barely pushing back the oppressive gloom, she saw the crumpled figure on the floor and gasped, thinking it was some new horror Poseidon had left behind, another defilement. "Medusa," she whispered, her voice tight with fear, barely a breath. The creature on the floor pushed itself up, its movements clumsy and strange in its new monstrous body. It turned its head, and the lamplight, hesitant and weak, fell upon its face. The writhing nest of serpents hissed as one a chorus of venom, and the glowing yellow eyes, now devoid of any human warmth, fixed on Athena. The high priestess screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror that tore through the silence of the desecrated temple. She dropped her lamp, which shattered on the marble, scattering fragments of light and shadow, and scrambled backwards, her face a mask of horror and revulsion. In her eyes, Medusa saw no recognition, no pity, no flicker of the love they had shared, only the primal, instinctual fear of a mortal confronting the monstrous. That look was a new kind of pain, a dagger of ostracism that twisted in her soul, sharper than any physical wound. Stumbling, Medusa lurched to her feet, her new limbs awkward and unfamiliar. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in a polished bronze shield leaning against a column, a mirror to her damnation. The face that stared back was not her own. It was a nightmare made flesh, a grotesque parody of a woman, crowned with a nest of hissing vipers. Its eyes burning with a sickly, lethal light, its features contorted into a permanent snarl. The realization of what she had become, the final, undeniable truth of her damnation, broke through her shock like a tidal wave. A sound tore itself from her throat, a sound that was not a word, not a sob, but a scream of such profound agony and loss that it shook the very foundations of the temple, vibrating through the ancient stones. It was the scream of a soul being ripped in two, the sound of every hope she had ever held, turning to ash, every dream dissolving into dust. The marble columns vibrated with it, and the remaining priestesses who heard it from the corridors would be haunted by it for the rest of their lives. A chilling echo in their memories. Athena, her terrible work complete, reappeared, her form shimmering with cold. Implacable authority, a goddess of unyielding justice. "Your presence is a blight upon this land," the goddess declared, her voice ringing with absolute finality, each word a hammer blow. "You will be banished. To the west, beyond the pillars of Heracles, at the very edge of the world, lies the island of Sarpedon, a place of rock and death. That will be your home. That will be your prison. Go now. Let your monstrous form never again cast a shadow on civilized lands, never again defile the light." The goddess's command was an irresistible force, a divine compulsion. Medusa felt her body moving against her will, lurching out of the temple she had once called home, past the horrified, recoiling faces of the women who had been her sisters in faith. She stumbled out into the night, a creature of darkness cast out from the light, her own scream still echoing in her ears, a constant reminder of her shattered existence. Chapter 11. The Island of Sarpedon. The journey to Sarpedon was a blur of misery and instinct, a haunted passage across a world that now recoiled from her. She did not know how she traveled, only that she was driven by the relentless force of Athena's banishment. Moving through the world like a phantom, a cursed shadow, she crossed desolate mountains and barren plains, always under the cloak of night. Hiding from the sun she had once loved, which now seemed to mock her with its warmth and beauty, its life-giving light, the island, when she finally reached it, was even more desolate than her darkest imaginings. It was a jagged fang of black volcanic rock jutting from a perpetually stormy sea, lashed by angry waves. There were no trees, save for a few skeletal, petrified husks that clawed at the gray. Weeping sky, their branches like bony fingers. No grass grew, only a sickly pale moss that clung desperately to the damp, unforgiving rocks. The air was filled with the constant mournful wail of the wind and the ceaseless crashing roar of waves against the shore, a symphony of despair. It was a place where hope came to die, where life itself seemed to wither. She was utterly, terribly alone. The serpents on her head were her only companions. Their constant hissing, a maddening chorus that gave her no peace, no moment of quiet. They were a living, writhing reminder of her curse, their cold bodies coiling around her neck, their forked tongues flicking against her cheeks, tasting her despair. For days she wandered the island, a landscape of her own despair made manifest. Each jagged rock a reflection of her broken spirit. She found a network of caves that riddled the island's core, a labyrinth of profound darkness that offered a refuge from the hateful light of day. This, she knew, would be her lair, her prison, her tomb. The true, horrifying nature of her curse became apparent on the third day of her solitary confinement. A seabird, blown off course by the relentless storm, landed near the mouth of her cave, seeking shelter. It chirped once, a small, cheerful sound in the oppressive silence, a fleeting note of life. Medusa, starved for the sight of any living thing, for any connection, looked at it. Her gaze, which had once been filled with gentle curiosity, was now a weapon she could not control, a conduit of death. The moment her glowing yellow eyes met the bird's, its cheerful chirp was cut short. Its feathers ruffled, its tiny body stiffened, and in a heartbeat, it was transformed from a living, breathing creature into a perfect, tiny statue of cold, gray stone. Medusa stared at the stone bird, a fresh wave of horror washing over her, colder than the sea. It was involuntary. She had not willed it. Her very sight was death. She was not just a monster in appearance. She was a walking plague, a harbinger of petrification. She fled deeper into her cave, pressing her face against the cold, damp rock, and wept. But her tears were not the warm, salty tears of a mortal girl. They were thick, oily, and cold, like the venom of her serpentine hair, a final, chilling sign of her transformation. Chapter the 12th. The Stone Garden. Time ceased to have meaning on Sarpedon. Days and nights bled into one another in a monotonous cycle of darkness and gloom, marked only by the ceaseless wail of the wind and the crashing of waves. Medusa learned to live in the deepest shadows of her cave, to never look directly at the sky, to avert her gaze from any living thing, a constant agonizing vigilance. But the world would not leave her be. Tales of the monster of Sarpedon began to spread, carried by terrified sailors who glimpsed the cursed island from afar, its dark silhouette a warning. They were tales of a hideous Gorgon, a challenge to any hero seeking glory, a beast to be slain for fame and renown. They were tales of a hideous Gorgon, a challenge to any hero seeking glory, a beast to be slain for fame and renown. He beached his ship and strode onto the island, his sword drawn, shouting challenges into the wind, his voice echoing mockingly against the desolate rocks. Medusa hid in her cave, praying he would leave, praying for his life, for her own peace. But he was relentless, driven by pride, following her tracks to the cave's mouth. "Come out, monster," he bellowed, his voice filled with a warrior's bravado. "Face me and die, foul creature!" Trembling, she backed deeper into the darkness, shrinking from the light and the inevitable. But he lit a torch and entered, its flickering light casting huge, terrifying shadows that danced like specters. He rounded a corner and saw her. For a fraction of a second, his arrogant face registered shock, then pure, unadulterated terror. His mouth opened to scream, but the sound never came. His body went rigid, the torch fell from his hand with a clatter, and the proud prince became a statue of stone. His face an eternal mask of horror, frozen in the moment of his demise. He was the first. He was not the last. They came in a steady, tragic parade. Brave warriors seeking glory, arrogant kings seeking conquest, foolish youths seeking to make a name for themselves. They came with swords and shields, with nets and spears, convinced of their own might. They came to hunt a monster, and one by one, they became the hunted. Medusa never sought them out. She never attacked, she only had to look. Her curse did the work for her, an inescapable, passive death. The landscape around her cave began to change, became a garden, a grotesque sculpture park of her own unwilling creation. A warrior with his sword raised mid-swing, frozen in eternal combat. An archer with an arrow knocked on his bowstring, forever aiming at nothing. A young man, barely more than a boy, clutching a satchel, his face a silent O of surprise, ever caught in his last breath. Each one was a monument to her damnation, a headstone in the cemetery of her life, testament to the goddess's cruel judgment. She would walk among them in the dead of night, when the moon was hidden behind storm clouds, and she could not see their faces clearly, could not see the horror in their eyes. She would touch the cold, hard stone of their forms, and a terrible, aching loneliness would consume her, a pain deeper than any physical wound. They were her only company, these silent, frozen men who had come to kill her. The constant hissing of the snakes on her head was the only answer to the wailing of the wind, the only sound in her desolate world. She was Medusa, the Gorgon, the queen of the stone garden, a prisoner on an island of death, haunted by the memory of a golden-haired girl who once sang hymns to a goddess in a temple of the sun, a life utterly destroyed by divine cruelty.
The old man tells epic stories. Part 1 ends. Let's move on to episode 2 in the next video. The hero's shadow and the serpent's blood. The battle between Perseus and Medusa.